In our previous video, we learned about how to create a simple FLASK application. We were able to activate our debugging mode inside our FLASK application and able to run the application at the same time. We were also able to look at basic simple hello world application in FLASK. And in case you missed that video, please check out the link in the description of this video. You're going to get nearly the same thing that we covered in our previous video. Today, we're going to look at how to create a simple FLASK API application. An API simply means an application programming interface. It allows you to develop an application that has different interfaces that you want to connect with it. For example, you can be using WhatsApp audio, WhatsApp for Android phone, WhatsApp for iOS, WhatsApp for web, and everything is connected to one backend. That backend is built purely on an API. Another good example of how API works is Slack. There is a Slack for Android, Slack for iOS, Slack for web, and Slack for a desktop application. All these are connected to a simple backend application, which is Slack. In order to be able to understand much about APIs, please also check a link in the description of this tutorial or the video. You'll get a full tutorial covering what APIs are, what types of APIs are, and how they are actually being used to develop modular and scalable applications, and up to what need would your application really need to have an API. There are different types of an API. There's private API and there is public API. Private APIs are built by local companies or companies that want to scale their inbuilt applications for them to use. While public APIs are applications that are APIs that are actually being built for individual users outside the internet to consume them and be able to make applications much more interactive and etc. According to Programming Web, there are close to 1,500 public APIs out there currently. One of the most commonly known ones are GitHub and Facebook, Google, and etc. All these coupled together makes what an API is. The next world tomorrow definitely needs applications that are actually able to communicate with each other. So take a look at the link on the description of this video, or simply goes to kenya-tech.com and just read through the contents that we have under the tutorials category. Read through Flask and read through Flask APIs, and we'll be building much more videos and tutorials based on consuming APIs, using blueprints to scale your APIs, testing, and etc. Thank you. So in this series, we're going to cover building a simple Flask application. So yesterday we were able to explain, like, this first line is able to import Flask from the Flask package, and then giving a Flask application a name, defining the route of our Flask application, and then when this route is called, it's going to call this hello function that we have here. And then this other line, which I've actually added in this tutorial, simply means this line checks for the main file in this Flask application and definitely just running it. Understanding that is not like something very much complex, especially when you want to start talking about APIs. APIs takes three. For an API, we're going to build an endpoint. So an endpoint is like that consumable part of an API that the other application will definitely invoke. So an endpoint has two major characteristics. One, it has to have a route or a URL. So URL is what we'll definitely define here. So we can rename this get hello. Also, apart from the URL, an API also has what we call a method. So a method is the type of request that an API is actually expecting. Each and every route has to have its own specific method. However, in some cases, when using REST APIs, which we'll cover more and probably later in this series, we're going to look at scenarios whereby two different endpoints share the same, two or three more different endpoints share the same URL, but then their methods has to be different. So in this case, we are going to provide a method. So to provide a method, we're just going to add methods attribute, which is equals to get. So we've just said that, okay, when we invoke this with a method get, when we invoke this URL with the method get, please return for us hello world at Kenya Tech, or this we can is a content from kenyatech.com. So this is pretty much simple of how we can convert a simple hello world application by just adding the method to make it an API. We can go ahead and build something else. So at app.route, so let's say in this case we're gonna talk about add user. The method will be post, and in this series we're going to have def add user It's going to be pretty much simple. So in this case we're going to build a post. In this case we have a get. Another thing that probably I'm going to do here, copy paste all of this. I'm gonna say here users. I'm going to build another get and simple users. So this is basically what we're going to do, and then we're going to scale this up. So in order to do this, I'm going to build a simple list. So I'm going to build user list, users list, which is going to be an empty list. So far, for us to get users, we're just going to say return. So if we say return users list, this is right. However, a return statement doesn't take in a list. It only takes in string objects. So in this case, we'll have to convert this into a JSON and definitely display it out. So in order to understand this, we're going to import a package called JSONify. To help us convert this list and make up our response. And also to make up our response, let's import something we call make response. It's a very important package that will help us definitely understand how we're going to do this. So to return the list of users, I'm going to say make response in bracket JSONify in bracket. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to say here, just putting it into a JSON users. Okay, and maybe before this I can come and say status okay. Just trying to understand the basic concepts of this. So in this case, in most cases, what we do when we have a return statement, we have to convert the users list into, so this is not users, this is called users list. We have to convert the users list into a JSON formatted text. So just converting into JSON, and that's what we have here. In this case also, we're going to have make response help us and define the entire response, just a function that helps us to make a beautifully modified response for our users. Also, what you're going to do in this case is you're going to consider what we call status codes. So in case you're wondering what status codes are, please take a look at kenyatech.com. I have a link on status codes here, so just go to kenyatech.com. I have a tutorial describing what status codes are, HTTP status codes. It fully describes how status codes work, and generally what they are for specific entities. So it's all about HTTP status codes. So if you go to kenyatech.com and you go to this link up here, or you go to the tutorials category, you're going to find HTTP status codes tutorial, which is just going to give you what type of status codes are and for that. So for a gets function, and if we get it successfully, we're going to return a status code of 200. Please take a look and take a note that this is a very important part of building APIs, because you're going to probably do testing on status codes later on to completely understand how status codes work and why they are very important on when we are actually building our Flask application. So in this tutorial, we're going to come back here and define our status code. So for a successful return, we're going to return a status code of 200. Now here we're going to have a function. So we're going to say a data is equals to request dot get JSON, which is a function. So remember, we also don't have request here, so we're going to import request as part of that as well. So request.getJSON, name is equals to data name, email is equals to data email. I'm going to say new user is equals to simple dictionary, name is equals to name, email is equals to email, and we're going to come here and say user list dot append new user. So let me rename this to users, not to users. Then return make response JSONify, and we're going to say message user added successfully. Okay, then probably we're gonna say username is equals to new user. We only want to return the name, so I'm going to take the name attribute of this user. Okay, and definitely as we wind up, we have to add a status code for this, and this is 201. Please, all those status codes are described in the link description of this video. So in this case, we have developed 3 endpoints. The first one is a get endpoint here, which is just going to return for us a statement. The second one here is a post endpoint. The last one here is also a get endpoints. All of them have different URLs, different methods apart from this that are definitely sharing this. So to run this application, we're going to go back to our terminal. So open our terminal, cd into videos, ls FLASK run, Okay, so it wasn't able to get our Flask up, so we're going to say export. Please note that all these are described in a previous video. Run.py. I'm also seeing that Flask debug is off. Meaning, oh no, Flask env. Okay, so I'm just going to say I was written Flask. This should be Flask up. Okay, if I come and say Flask run, our application is now running on this route. So to test our APIs, we're going to use a tool we call Postman. Postman is just like an API consumer that is usually being used to test for APIs. Instead of building a web interface to test these APIs, we can use a Postman to definitely try to consume our APIs and see whether they are working or not. It will take probably less than 1 hour, less than 1 minute to launch Postman, depending on the speed of my machine that you are using. In case you're not comfortable using Postman, I usually advise that you need to go ahead and install what we call Insomnia, which is also an alternative of using Postman as well. So in this case, we're going to have come here. We're doing a test, a get request, and get hello as our links. So when you just send this is a content from Kenya Tech, which is definitely going to come and get displayed here. So this is, in this case, if you take a look at what we had here, we just return a simple statement and we didn't make the response to be in a JSON formatted text. And that's why it's coming to be a plain text, probably black in context. In this case, it will be very hard for us to render this page into a text, especially when we have different types of data that are definitely coming in. So in order to add a user, I'm going to just say to get users, so we're just going to say users, try to get them using use status is okay. The users list is an empty list as we stand. So to put this much together, I'm going to add a user, add users, I don't know what is the link, add user, okay, and it's a post, sorry, and in our body we'll have name and email. So when we send this, user added successfully, the username is Alan. As we had here, we can have Tom, user has been added successfully, the username is Tom. So we can say users, method is get, send this. You're going to say status is okay, users is Alan and Tom, as just we have added them. Also you can see in this case the status code is okay. If we add the status code here, will be created, meaning 201. So that's a very simple basic way of implementing Flask API and consuming our APIs using Flask. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, as we'll be creating much more user modified content for a beginner who is starting to learn what programming and building a very important and scalable application in Python. As well as that right now we are majorly focusing on Flask, but we'll be definitely demystifying this into some others like Django and probably TensorFlow on your Python application. Please note that in this case we have basically used a pure Flask application, nothing much more. We are not using any REST API right now, so in our next tutorial we'll be looking at how to build this similar application but now using REST, and you'll definitely get to understand and appreciate the effect that REST has on building applications. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel and check our website kenya-tech.com for much more videos as this. Thank you.